Namaskar guys, I'm Neil. I cleared HCS in 2021 and I welcome all of you to your own channel. Today we're going to discuss 2025 prelims examination and we're going to roughly analyze and predict what the cutoff is going to be. To establish the credibility at the outset, this is an analysis we did the last year and our prediction was absolutely on the money. Uh, Now, it is not akin to being a Nostradamus. You don't need to be a Nostradamus to predict the cutoff. All you need to do is analyze the pattern you see in previous year questions, and then you need to lean into your experience. So overall, this year history was relatively easy, as could be seen from multiple questions across art and culture, across ancient, medieval, and modern. That was one good thing. Directly, you had questions similar to exactly same question as 2016. Again, I think this was inspired from a previous year question. And again, as usual, we have questions from NCM, CDM, Quit India Movement, and very easy. You knew statement number 3 was incoherent. History was easy this year. Economics was not directly from a source, but you could liberally apply heuristics. So heuristical understanding was very easily applicable in economics. Now I want to speak about one thing that you're going to observe on, especially on YouTube, especially on a lot of discussion forums, that in this quote unquote industry, if we could call it that, the UPSC industry, there is a division between people who are selling content versus who are selling quote unquote elimination. Again, elimination as a broad term for me is nothing, it is mostly using cheap trick. What I don't endorse, what I do endorse is using your basic knowledge, using logical reasoning on top of it, and applying heuristical framework. And heuristical frameworks work in a context. And then I was reading this book for economics some time back, and it opened my eyes to a brilliant idea that apparently I was, untouched with, for a long time. In Freakonomics, the author says morality is how we think the world works, but economics is how it actually works. So people who are saying everything comes from content and elimination is a lie, say so because their shop is dependent on selling a content ka course. Similarly, the charlatans, people who say content is nothing and I will teach you everything, I will help you clear the exam with no content, are saying so because they are quote unquote peddling their courses based on that. The reality lies somewhere in between. So do not be a casualty for someone else's interest. You have to have very basic knowledge. Without the edifice of basic knowledge, you cannot apply, even no cheap trick can be applied without basic knowledge. But beyond the bare minimum content base, additional content doesn't help as much as application with logical reasoning does, which was apparent in a lot of questions. For instance, in this question about peacock tarantula. Now, tarantula we know is a spider and they are arachnids. It is not a crustacean. Crustacean, crabs, etc. are crustaceans. So you eliminate, I don't like to use the term eliminate because now elimination has a very negative connotation, and charlatans, people who are selling you cheap tricks, have associated elimination with that negative emotion. So, one stands to be negated rather, and 2 and 3 are coherent. This is what I like to call a heuristic. How are they coherent? Forest and arboreal are the same thing. 2 and 3 are coherent. You mark D, move forward, get a positive. So like every year, environment, what? Environment, science and tech had to be done with your heuristical understanding. No standard source exists. Even 34, a lot of people mistakenly applied a cheap trick rather, and made it correct, where they would have negated all and they would have eliminated rather one and would have come to the right answer. But rather, this question, this statement was incorrect because of the organization, which is what we discuss in the heuristical approach to the exam. It is SEBI. But all the listed companies have to submit this report, listed companies. So if it said SEBI, then even though it had all, this would have stood to be correct. That is why I say anyone using a cheap trick without context will be condemned to failure in this examination over and over again. So overall, as I said, I'll just repeat, history was easy, as we have seen. Polity was moderate. S&T environment, as usual, had to be done with heuristical understanding. And economy, in economy, direct hits were far and few, but heuristics liberally worked. Geography was once a subject which had direct hit rates from NCERT last year. This time it was much more convoluted and difficult. Uh, Again, a lot of questions where heuristics work like a charm. For instance, question number 70. Which organization has enacted a law? Out of these four organizations, only one is capable enough to enact a law, which is a sovereign European Union. World Bank cannot give you a law. Who will listen to World Bank? OECD cannot, FAO cannot. Similarly, here, we know it is used if you have basic knowledge about GPS and about rather, our own indigenous uh, navigation system. Gagan is a system it's a navigation system to make it finer in its working. And that is why, 2 was correct and 3 again was of the kind this but not this. Hence, stands to be negated. And again, all stands to be negated, you arrive at the right answer. So heuristical understanding, and at times some cheap tricks also were working. Even though I don't recommend using cheap tricks, because in the grander scheme of things, across 100 questions, it is more likely to land you at a net negative. Again, now you had CSAT integrated with GS, this time where in economy based questions they gave you such and such questions, which was a difference. And as usual, there were questions which had to be absolutely left. Anyone going anywhere near a question like this is going to get a minus 0.67 very easily. Because do you know, where do you read this? What kind of a standard source do you refer for a question like this? And no heuristical understanding, no even cheap trick works here. It absolutely does not. So leave questions like this. I say over and over again, I don't know who this person is, and apparently they have taken an attempt with B. I strongly discourage taking attempt in especially questions like these where you don't have any good reason to attempt. So attempt as many questions as you possibly can without taking a blind guess. There are some blanket questions like this wherein you will have to take a blind guess to attempt this. So leave this. You don't have to attempt all 100 questions. Finally, as usual, every year it's the same old story. Even last year, 2024, UPSC released the key 3-4 days before the exam, because मेरे रूल में मेरी बात चलेगी, I don't care who you are, is the kind of attitude that I see from the commission. There were a lot of ambiguity that you also see here, and there are a lot of ambiguity. For instance, in this question, how do you quantify easily is up for debate. अब जिसे कहते हैं ऊंट किस करवट बैठेगा, nobody knows, but ideally you should not be making ambiguous questions like this. Similarly, in statement number 1, I understand the idea they are conveying. I understand it's a CSAT question in the end. In GS, I understand the spirit that they're saying, but when they say this place in Siberia and Nome, Alaska are few kilometers from each other, ideally, factually they are 800 kilometers apart. So should it be called a few kilometers, or are they taking a narrow interpretation or saying, they are indeed only 3 kilometers? 800 kilometers in the grander scheme of things is a small number. I don't know what they're going to do. So we'll have to wait and see. 800 kilometers, just for reference, is the distance from Delhi to Kathmandu or from Delhi to Varanasi. Is that just a few kilometers? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. If they negate it, well and good, but otherwise, in the broad spirit, they can also accept it. Ideally, they should do away with such questions, but there's hardly anything we can do about it. So please do not go and search for coaching keys, because you are only going to create anxiety. I have also made a cursory key, but I am not going to release it because I need to do more research. Plus, even after doing the research, I know there will be 6 to 7 ambiguous questions, where commission will take the final call. So you can get an overarching idea from the keys if you want, but it is not going to serve a grand purpose, because the cutoff that I'm going to discuss is going to be calculated from the official UPSC key, and there are always ambiguities even in that key. In my assessment, even CSAT this year was more difficult than 2024. CSAT was more difficult than what? 2024. GS again was more difficult than 2024. But this year the seats are, you know, what? 8% lesser than last year. So minus 8% seats, which means that lower the number of seats, higher the cutoff. But the difficulty level of the examination overall is higher in both GS and CSAT, but marginally lesser than 2023. Considering all of these factors, the final cutoff in my assessment again, which is very likely to be closer to the real cutoff, which is going to come out in I think May 2026. So please screenshot this and you can compare it just how we have compared the cutoff we discussed for 2024 on the first page. In our assessment is going to be 81 plus minus 3, but from commission scheme for UR category. Similarly, for OBC category, the cutoff has to be 80 plus minus 3. For EWS, it has to be 79 plus minus 3. For SC, it has to be 73 plus minus 3. And for ST, it is 68 plus minus 3. So keep a screenshot handy. And if you're anywhere near this, even if you're within 15-18 marks of this, minus, you should continue to prepare for mains for a very simple reason that there are going to be ambiguity. Ambiguity in every single question swings the pendulum by 2.67 marks. By 3 questions will swing the pendulum by 8 marks. So there are going to be differences in the key released by coaching institutes and UPSC. So unless and until you're 40 marks away from the cutoff, you have to keep your hope alive. And if you're going to continue in the cycle for the next year, you have to prepare for the mains eventually. No point in starting with prelims again. And I'm sure you're going to take the best decision for your career. If you have any follow-up query, I'm going to put the link of the Telegram channel. You can go to Telegram and search for this and ask your queries freely in the evening in some time today. We're going to have a session where we're going to come together, we're going to take some live queries, and you can see if that is going to aid your cause. I hope this video would have added a lot of value to your preparation, and I wish you the best either ways. Best of luck, guys. Take care. May God bless all of you.